All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Maran Motoring live stream here on the Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Thanks so much for stopping by on this Saturday evening. I switched things up, and I'm sorry I didn't give you guys a heads up more than just a few hours ago here on this. It was just that I had forgotten about a family thing that's happening tomorrow night that I'm not wanting to miss. So ended up doing Saturday night. Hopefully it works out okay. We'll see, who's able to show up. I know in the past Saturdays have worked okay or better for some people in certain cases. So hopefully we can still have a fun live tonight. But I also figured, with the announcement today of the new car that, it'd be kind of fun to talk about it while it's still super fresh here. But we might have less people tonight, and that's okay if we do. But anyway, thank you all so much for stopping by. Like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering, then anyone does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's a link in the description there. I see B. Mitchell, the first one, he says, looks like my first one out of the gate. I saw Matt sing the praises of Beth's new lyric earlier. Now that you have firsthand experience, is GM better off having Cadillac dealers selling C8s? It was a really great experience. I've never bought any other GM vehicle before, so I can't compare a Chevy experience. I used to work, with a Chevy dealer, though, Tom Henry Chevy back in the day when they were still around. That was, still would have been a great experience just because they had, again, great staff, nice place and all that. So, it really comes down to which Chevy dealer you're talking about. I'm sure there's some that are probably rough and maybe aren't, super high caliber. But, at least, the ones that I've been inside of have been, really nice. It's Cadillac is certainly, obviously a step above Chevy, but it's still not like a Bentley dealer or something. So I think especially with some of these C8s, getting so expensive for like the Z01X and all these others, it's one of those things where you can only go so high. At the end of the day, like people understand they're still buying a Chevy and they can only expect so much. Sure, it doesn't feel great to be dropping huge amounts of money in a Chevy dealer, I guess, for some people, but I think most Corvette buyers and fans have already gotten over that a long time ago. But yeah, I guess it couldn't hurt. I still think they should have a Cadillac version of the C8. It seems so natural, especially now being mid-engine and everything, but it sounds like they've thought about it and decided against it for a variety of reasons. And also I want to welcome all the others that are joining in here now. So I see we have Brian, also Cam Jam, Luke, Chad, Jazz, Mr. 705, Nicholas, Fook, and Jesus and Lanswath. And so thanks so much for joining everyone. And again, apologies on the switch up here for the Saturday night one here. But also, B. Mitchell said, also cheating once again for my spot of the week at an auction. But I saw a 1931 Chevy Roadster right-hand drive with a Holden body originally from Aussieland. They also had a U.S.-made left-hand drive example in the sale. Also watching an online auction ending at 8 p.m. with a competitor to comparable to my 1942 Ford GPW Jeep on it. That's cool. And I actually thought of you, Mitchell, tonight because we were driving the Lyric earlier this afternoon, and I was behind a Lincoln Continental Mark VI, and they had the little gills on the side opened up, and it is cool to see, but it's so funny because a Continental, it looks so small in front of the Lyric, just honestly giant and 6,000 pounds and everything else. But it's wild how cars that seem so big back then a lot of them still are very long. And I think that was kind of towards the end whenever they started to downsize a little bit, but still like a Continental being so small in comparison was kind of wild. And we see Brian says, I saw a classic car this week in a 2024 Ford Mustang GT convertible. Very nice. Yeah, the other oddball I saw this week, just actually earlier today, was a Cadillac CTS wagon, not the V wagon, but just regular CTS wagon. And that was pretty wild to see. It actually, it's probably the first time I've seen a CTS wagon in several months, if not longer. And it had a huge dent in the rear door, which is kind of funny, but still cool to see one nonetheless. And let me see here. So Luke says, why Saturday night this week? Yeah, so I mentioned that a minute ago. I'm sure you probably caught it, but it was just on my bad on my end. I just forgot there's something going on tomorrow night that I didn't want to miss. So yeah, apologies about not doing an announcement sooner. I know we missed not having one on Wednesday because of Beth and I's anniversary. So it's been a little while for a live. But let me see. And Chad says, happy belated anniversary. I appreciate that, Chad. And Cam says, I'm so happy I predicted the lyric from Matt's goodbye video to the Maki. Yeah, there's only a few people that guessed the lyric. It was really fun to read everyone's guesses and see what everyone was thinking. Yeah, I mean, it probably was an unexpected thing, especially because I know a lot of people think that all GM vehicles don't have CarPlay and all those types of things. But yeah, this was, again, just all the right stuff like we talked about in the video. Just kind of had the right equipment that we wanted and needed, the right price, the right, connections, and just all that just kind of came together. It was really cool. But yeah, if you guys have any follow-up questions after seeing the video or anything, happy to chat as much or as little as you guys want to talk about it tonight. Let me see. Mr. 705 says, hey, Matt, really happy you decided to go with the lyric. It's a great looking car. Thanks. Yeah, yeah, as I said in the video, I mean, I really love the styling of the lyric. I'd say it's probably one of my top favorites. And I mean, styling isn't that important to me. I would have gladly gone for, whatever Beth was leaning towards, but Lyric's always been one of my favorite looking EVs, and just honestly modern cars in general. I just think it's really, really cool. So glad that some of you guys also are enjoying it too. And let me see. I see Cam also says happy anniversary. I appreciate that. Nicholas, I'm glad you like the caddy as well. And let me see. Landswath says, good evening. My spots this week are a white R35 GTR and a gray BMW X6M. Very nice. Especially the GTR. It's always so fun to see GTRs. Fuchs says, congrats again on the car, Matt. Bring Beth on here so she can talk about her new whip too. Yeah, we were thinking about having her come on tonight, but she's got a few other things she's got to do, unfortunately. But she can probably come on, maybe even next week and chat some more then, or Wednesday night even possibly. We'll have to see. But yeah, she wants to come on to the lives a little more often here, and yeah, it was fun to do a video with her because we hadn't done a video. I mean, even interior reviews, we haven't done one of those in I think well over a year at this point. So it was cool to have her be able to interact with you guys again here. And Lancelot, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate it, and happy to see some familiar faces that are able to get those memberships there, and I think 1 or 2 maybe new ones as well. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Lancelot. Let me see. Where were we here? So yeah, and Cam says love the green on the new car. Yeah, that was exciting for Beth and I as well to be back in a dark green car. We also did really like, we didn't mention this in the video, we really like this celestial color, I think is what it's called, which is like a purpley gray. It's a really cool color. It actually in sunlight especially looks like almost straight up purple, and I think it was actually a really pretty color, and for Lyric I think it suited it very well. But Beth was kind of on the fence, and after seeing both in person, she just actually really liked the green. I actually thought she'd lean towards the purple, and that's what I was kind of preparing for. And then she was like, "No, I actually want the green." So that was kind of a funny, but I think I didn't expect. But yeah, there's some beautiful colors they offer for that. There's also that I can't remember, was opulent blue, I think is the color called, and it's just a really insanely saturated blue. It's really cool too. They're really doing a good job on colors for the Lyric as well. Luke says, interesting spot this week, a first gen Colorado with a 5.3 liter V8. It had a badge and the guy started it up. It was definitely a V8. That's awesome. Yeah, I can't remember. I think at some point there was a V8 option, but then I know there's also development mules of V8s, and I think those, I can't remember if it was just for the new gen they decided not to do it or what, but and I'm sure there are swap kits as well too, because I feel like that'd be a very popular swap. But that's awesome you saw it. Cam says we needed acceleration from Beth in the new whip. Yeah, we're actually doing rolling shots today. I have a Golf R press car right now, and we're doing rolling shots, and she's like, wow, it was really easy for me to keep up with the Golf R, and it's even more than the Mach-E, which wasn't slow, but yeah, she got on it a little bit here today. But yeah, I already did a review on the Lyric, so I probably won't do anything else as far as reviews go. I can do a POV video on it if you guys want to see a POV drive, because I didn't do one obviously on the Lyric, last year, because I wasn't doing them at that point. But so I can do that if you guys are interested in seeing that. But otherwise, just gonna be update videos really as far as the experience goes. And there may be a few more updates on it than the Mach-E, because we have already noticed there is one trim piece that's not perfectly installed on the inside, and there is a little rattle by the moonroof that comes and goes. So I'm gonna see again how those two things kind of develop here. Give it a little bit of time, but I may take it back to the dealer and get those things checked out, and I'll give you guys an update, once I kind of know what's what with those things. But I may do a little update video on that. Fit and finish hasn't been perfect, I will say that, and that's just something. Actually, after we filmed the video yesterday, we're driving around, and she's like, "Oh, look, like this isn't perfectly installed here." So just minor little things like that, not a big deal. I'm not OCD about cars anymore, so especially a family car, and it doesn't have to be perfect with the fit and finish, but just something that we didn't have any rattles in the Mach-E really or anything like that. So we'll see how it goes. That's the whole point of doing these long-term kind of things with our personal vehicles, is to see how they hold up. So we'll see if the Lyric holds up as well as the Mach-E did. And let me see. Jesus says, has Toyota released a Corolla new concept? I don't think there's any new Corolla concepts that I've seen yet. Yeah, there's, they just announced the 2026s, and seems like it's all carryover pretty much. So I guess 2027 will be maybe the model year for a new Corolla. We'll have to see. I mean, Toyota sometimes takes their time if they don't feel a need to, do something new. So they may even push it longer than that. As long as it keeps GR Corolla around, I don't care what they do with Corolla. Selfishly, that's the only one I care about. But yeah, we'll see what they end up doing, and how they decide to play that going forward. But I haven't seen any new concepts. And Jack, thanks for stopping by. And Jordan says, love the new vehicle. Will you do a short trying to connect Apple Watch to the infotainment just for kicks? I'm pretty sure you can't connect the Apple Watch to anything other than Bluetooth headsets. And I don't think a car works, because it kind of be like the Spider-Man meme of like, who's doing what? Because like, the watch is supposed to output, the watch doesn't input, but I think the car trying to interface with the watch, I don't think that would actually I don't think the car would accept it as an input source. And I don't know anyone who has ever done that, so that's why I also think there's no way it's possible, because I feel like I would have seen some kind of discussion of that online, and I feel like I haven't seen anyone ever do that. But it's one of those funny things that I don't think anyone's really ever talked about. So maybe it'll be something I can try to. I just don't want to screw up the Lyric, because we have our two phones paired, and that is the other thing. Is there was one time where the pairing was a little odd. Sometimes, and I actually had this happen in the Escalade press car I had not too long ago as well, where sometimes CarPlay will still continue to work normally, but the connection to the car, as far as like skipping tracks on the steering wheel or showing the song info on the gauge cluster, like that part doesn't work. And it's only happened once so far on the Lyric, and we've been driving the Lyric for about a week now, actually. So it's only been the one time, but yeah, that's the only little connection glitch, but everything else thankfully seems to be working pretty well. And it's actually easier to swap phones than on the Mach-E. The Mach-E, like if both Beth and I got in the car and it connected to the wrong phone for CarPlay, like going in is like a 5 tap into submenus to find how to swap over to the other phone. With like Lyric, it's just literally a 1 button press, so that's great. And Kraken, thanks so much for being a member for 40 months now. I really appreciate all the long-term support. It's almost 4 years. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm gonna have to do a new member badge once we hit 4 years. But we do have that's not gonna be happening until next year, whenever the first people cross over. Because I think March is when I introduced them all those years ago. So yeah, but that's so awesome you crossed the 40-month mark. And thank you so much for being a supporter basically from the beginning. I really appreciate it, Kraken, and I hope you're having a fun weekend here too. And let me see. So Theodore says, congrats. I appreciate it, Theodore. And V. Mitchell says, the Mark 4s look like a caricature of my Mark 5, too stumpy looking, too tall, and they got the proportions all wrong. And they added a 4-door. Yeah. So, and I think this was a Mark 6. So I think that was probably even maybe a little stumpier still. Because it was surprising to me how small it was. I didn't remember them being that small. And Kraken says, hello, Matt. Glad to see you. Kraken is back and just drove her for the first time in 2 weeks. Forgot how fast and dramatic that car was. Reminded me of how much I love it. That's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And Chad says, spot of the week was a newer Suburban bouncing between lanes on a regular non-interstate highway, relying a little too much on the self-driving gizmos. Interesting. Yeah, something like that. Which is, yeah, I don't know. If it's a newer Suburban, maybe it had Super Cruise, but Super Cruise would not let you bounce all over the place like that. That's crazy. And Jack's asking, does Acura have any plans on hybrid models? They haven't announced it. It's really bizarre. They don't have them. It's right on the parts shelf. It's easy to do. And I often in these live streams talk about like, there's so many easy things that Honda and Acura could both do to boost sales that are, again, just direct bolt-ins pretty much that they just refuse to do or take way too long to implement for whatever reason. And hybrids are one of those things. I mean, for the, larger stuff, MDX and all that, I think there's been talk that they are working on a hybridized version of that platform for a next generation. So that I think is, I think I heard late 2020s into the 2030s maybe. And that is probably also a response to like Palisade getting a hybrid here this year. But as far as the smaller stuff, I mean, it all could have it. RDX shares some components with CRV. I mean, it's significantly different, but it's all there. Same thing, with the ADX and Integra, obviously. So it's yeah. I don't know what they're waiting for. Your guess is as good as mine because it just makes absolutely zero sense, and I have no rhyme or reason as to why they're not doing it. And Kraken says the Lyric was completely unexpected. The Ioniq was close though, but Beth wasn't a fan of the styling. I would have bought it in a heartbeat. The optic looks good too. Yeah. Yeah, Ioniq has always been one of my favorites. But even like back whenever we, were getting the Mach-E 3 years ago, I was like, I'd rather have the Ioniq. And I've said many times, if it were me, my own personal decision, Ioniq is probably what I would have got back then. But the problem with Ioniq, they were doing good lease deals a while back, but like recently the lease deals have not been good. And I don't know if it's just that they're confident about the 2025s or something changed at Hyundai, because I mean, even whenever I was shopping for the Fiat back in February, like there was some pretty competitive stuff. I mean, I remember back in February getting a quote for an Ioniq 5 because I was thinking about getting one instead of the Fiat. I think for a sign and drive, the best that I could manage was something like $350 to $450 a month. Some I think were close to $500 still, which again isn't even that great, honestly. And then they've gotten even worse with the incentives since then. So like, it probably would have been, again, probably almost as expensive as the Lyric. Again, it's the combination of not only does Cadillac have really good incentives, but again, the demo thing. That's another thing that most others don't do. And, when I was calling about Ioniqs, again, back in February, I was calling dealers that had like 2024s. Some even had 2023 sitting on their lots. In the beginning of 2025, I'm like, look, don't you want to get rid of these things? Like, let's work out a deal here. And they had no interest in getting rid of their 2024s. They were happy to have them sitting around the lots, zero pressure on their end. They didn't even care. I mean, maybe I just didn't get lucky with finding a good Hyundai dealer, but like none of them. I mean, I really wanted an Ioniq 6 originally before the Fiat. And I, really was calling around trying to get anyone to give me a deal on an Ioniq 6, and no one was going to do it. Everyone was like, like 400, 500 bucks a month. I'm like, all right, forget that. I'm getting this Fiat for 130, so, and yeah, again, I don't want to say exactly what I paid, what we're paying monthly for the Lyric, just because, again, I don't want the Cadillac dealer being inundated with people being like, I want the same price that he got, because, again, there's other things, again, like the Cadillac corporate incentive and things like that you're not gonna be able to match it. But like, the Lyric is so close to the price quotes that I got back in February on all the Ionics and stuff. It's, again, undercutting the quotes I was getting on Mach-E here in the past month or so. That it's just like, because that's the other thing is people were saying, I talk about how the channel is not doing well and this, that, and the other. How am I affording a Lyric? And it's because it's basically the same price, the same price. I couldn't really do any better with any of the others unless I went for like the really unwanted ones like Prologue, Aria. Those, you could actually, if you're not picky on color and you're okay with a base trim, you can pick up an Aria for like 200 bucks a month, and Prologue is closer to probably 300, but like, so there were some real cheap ones. We're not, that cheap with the Lyric, but it's just, like Beth really, there's some things that were non-negotiable. Like she really wanted to have a 360 camera because that has really helped her when she's been in, a tight parking spot. She's been really nervous, things like that. And there's some of these equipment things that, you got to go up to a higher Aria to get the 360 camera, and those are more expensive. And, and then again, I also wanted something that she didn't, something that she was excited about. Obviously, again, we have to watch our money, and so that's why like we found something that is cheaper than the Mach-E, but was a nice upgrade. I think we kind of, again, struck a nice happy medium there, because even just tonight, like Beth was like, I'm so excited every time I drive in this thing, and I'm just tickled looking at it. It's just, again, I'm very excited about it too, and so it's just one of those things that's also like working with Cadillac was nice. Because like, Ford, aside from giving me the VIP ordering on the Bullet, which was very nice, but like since then, kind of hit or miss with working with Ford. Just working with a company that I know has worked well with me in the past and that's easy to work with, that's always been supportive of the channel. Again, I'm not biased in any way, and if the Lyric is a complete piece of garbage after a year or two here, I'm going to say it. But GM was the first people to send me press cars. They were, back in 2015. I mean, they've always been a very nice supporter, despite all the grief I give them. I mean, I bash them hard on no CarPlay whenever they announce that. Whenever they have cars that are crappily priced, I say it. I never have pulled punches with GM, and they always still keep giving me stuff and being, great to work with. And that's, to me, the sign of a good company is when you can take the heat, you can take criticism, and you don't silence your critics and you don't try and cut them off, which is very poignant in the times we're living in now. But, GM, they were really cool about that. And there's been other companies that have been either shady with me or with others, that I'm companies I wouldn't want to support, even if it was the best fit for us. So it was, again, just kind of all these perfect scenarios, and just, being excited to finally, get a GM vehicle, I think is just something that was kind of a nice little cherry on top as well. But let me see. Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. And he says, does the Lyric have a specific home charger? It did come with a charger. I think most EVs still do actually come with a charger. It's just a level 1 with a level 2 kind of plug. If you have, like the dryer outlet there in your garage, you can, use the charger for both. We just have level 1 charging, and we actually just kept the charger from the Mach-E, because that's not something that has to stay with the car whenever you trade in a car. They don't expect the charger. So we still have the Mach-E charger. We'll live on the little piece of the Mach-E there. And we just, plug it into the wall, level 1, and it's totally fine. But yeah, you can, I actually have a charging cable from the Fiat too. So I have, because I know these charging cables probably won't last forever. So I'm like stockpiling chargers, so I don't have to spend a bunch of money on one, down the road. So we'll see how long the Mach-E one lasts, and then we'll use probably the Fiat or the Cadillac one next. But yeah, they all come with chargers. It's a nice charger. The Cadillac one, actually, it comes in this like leather covered briefcase kind of thing. It's a zipper kind of thing, but looks like a briefcase. And it's just kind of a cool little packaging for it there. And I think they mentioned at the dealer, like the idea that like it should be returned when we return the car. I'm going to have to look into that, because I'm not entirely sure. Typically, you don't have to give a charger back, but we'll see. And thanks for the super chat there, Jordan. And confirmation, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, with the rising MSRP of half-ton trucks, is there a business case for an Acura Ridgeline variant? Fully loaded Honda Ridgeline is 65 grand for reference. Really? 65? Are you? I can't remember if you're in America or not. Because Honda Ridgeline is not 65 grand here. I mean, even like Passport, Pilot, I think those max out just a little, like maybe 55. So maybe we're talking Canadian for that. He says I live in the US. I mean, someone can fact check, but I'm pretty sure Honda Ridgelines are not 65 grand fully loaded, unless there was a giant price hike that I missed. But I think as far as the first part of your question there, though, with an Acura Ridgeline, I think there's always room to have nicer versions of any of these trucks because, we see how, the high-end luxury trucks are really growing in market share. GMC has been saying they've been having fantastic years back to back, and Denali has, grown really fast for them and been like a huge chunk of buyers want the Denalis. And so that sends a clear signal that like there is an appetite for high-end trucks. And this is why I said Lincoln should have brought back the Blackwood. They had way back when. I think there should be an Escalade truck again. I think they're happy just letting GMC do that thing, but I think there's room to go beyond GMC because Cadillac interiors are clearly much nicer than GMC's. So I think that's an easy cash grab they could totally do, and people would completely go for it. I mean, I guess we'll see, with uncertain market times now, but I think in the past few years, there was absolutely something that could have been in play. And I think there still is, I think a good business case to be made for that. And the same thing extends to the Ridgeline. I think even, you want to go even crazier, I think the Genesis should have a version of the Santa Cruz, and just have a nicer, kind of utility truck there for Genesis even, I think could possibly work. But yeah, absolutely. I think Acura Ridgeline could totally make a lot of sense. And Raphael, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, Matt's not telling us the truth. He bought a Lyric for Beth and an Audi e-tron GTRS for himself. I wish. That's way above my pay grade. There are people getting pretty sweet deals on like Taycans and Audi e-trons I saw. On like, because Lease Hacker has been a huge inspiration for me. Leasehacker.com. That's like people are showing these insane lease deals they're getting. It's wild. But that was still way over what we wanted to spend. I think the cheapest I've seen someone lease e-trons, like the base e-trons, I think you can maybe get some of those around $700 or $800 a month. But I think the RS versions, I don't think I've seen anyone go below $1,000 a month for one of those. Which, I mean, again, is not bad for a car that, I don't know what they were, 140, 150, 60 grand, something like that. But that would have been nice. I mean, trust me, Beth would love a Taycan, the Taycan Cross Turismo. We would be all over that if we could afford it. But no, she's really happy with the Lyric. And thanks so much for the super chat, Raphael. And Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, so a Lincoln version of the Maverick, that may be a little bit of a bridge too far. I don't know, because the Maverick is so kind of bare bones and smaller. I think Santa Cruz kind of could work because it is a little bit bigger. But if they did a big reskinning and just kind of used the platform and made something a little bit bigger, I think that Lincoln could possibly do something like that as well. But especially, I mean, it's just low hanging fruit with the F-150. It's literally the number one selling vehicle in America. Why is there not, multiple versions? I mean, Lincoln could do a version. I mean, there could be other variants they could even, possibly turn out. I mean, we have the Lightning and stuff, but like, hopefully we get an actual dedicated sport truck with, more power. I mean, I'm just surprised they haven't done more with that 150, to be honest. And especially since they love it so much and that's such a high priority, like they just really haven't explored that as much. So I think they could. But thank you so much again, Jordan, for the super chat there. And confirmations following up about the Ridgeline. He says it's for a black edition fully loaded on their website with every option and accessory. Okay, with accessories, I guess, maybe you could. Wow, I'm even surprised that you can do 10 grand in accessories on a Ridgeline. Accessories is really, I don't think anyone usually, I mean, because you're talking like the coolers, the engine block warmer, like all, just all these insane accessories. That seems a little unfair. I never even consider accessories because that seems like a very, um, yeah, it's not a very consistent thing to kind of judge against because some companies have a ton of accessories, some have very few. But if you talk, I'm pretty sure just like if you go in the configurator, Ridgeline Black Edition, just and go to checkout or whatever, and the end price, I'm pretty sure it shouldn't be more than 55. I'm not sure. But let me see here. Where were we? So, trying to scroll back. I know I kind of went on some tangents here, so we're a little behind. So, where were we here? Finding my spot. So Harsha says, recently got some new hubcaps on my Model Y. One of the older hubcaps must have fallen off, so we decided to replace all of them. Nice. Well, hopefully able to do something, increases the curb appeal for you a little bit there. That's cool. I remember back in the day, the hubcap craze of being able to pick all those out at Advanced Auto Parts, or even Walmart had like a whole wall of hubcaps at one point. If you're old enough to to remember that time period, that's kind of funny. But that's, yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of helps that modernize the look too if you got the newer ones there. Maybe you'll get some little efficiency improvements. I don't know. It's crazy that one of them fell off though. And Kraken says spot of the week was today a Mustang Bullet at a car show literally 2 hours ago. Debated taking a photo and sending it to you. That's awesome. Yeah, it's always fun to see a Bullet, and I still miss mine dearly. And Luke says, listen to plenty of music so you can get more lyrics. But it's kind of funny. It always trips up my phone's autocorrect every time I put the Q at the end. And it's like, what are you doing? Why are you spelling lyric like that? So I just have to like teach it to remember that spelling. And then it'll be in my phone like that forever. But Cam says, I didn't even realize, but I've been a member for 2 years. I appreciate that, Cam. Thanks so much for the support. And hope you're enjoying the new badge there as well. B. Mitchell said he was talking about the Mark 6 there with the stubbiness. Gotcha. Yeah. I guess when they started to lose their way, right? And Jack says, spotted a pale yellow Corvair last week. It looked like a Survivor from 50 yards away in traffic. Never seen one in person before. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, Corvairs they're actually fairly not common, but I see them pretty often at car shows. Or even just out and about. Funny story, a long time ago, I was closely considering picking up a classic car. This was actually back in the BRZ days when I was really raking in the views and everything and was comfortable kind of maybe branching out and getting another fun car. I didn't test drive it. I went for a ride with the owner in a Corvair. I was considering a pale yellow, actually, convertible Corvair. And I ended up just not loving the Corvair. It's cool in its own way. And I think back in the day, it was a visionary vehicle and really cool of GM to be so bold to kind of try that. But there's just so many cool classic cars, even some around similar money, that the Corvair just to me is a tough sell. But I considered it. I also went for like a ride in a 53 or 54 Mercury coupe that I was considering picking up, but it was really rusty and kind of rough around the edges. But that was, this interesting time period where I I did a few little like ride-alongs, contemplating some classic cars, and then I've never gotten close to getting one since then, and probably won't for a long time now. We'll see. I'm still just biding my time until all the people that actually like that stuff age out, and then I can swoop in and scoop it all up for next to nothing. Jordan says, just got a promotion at Whataburger. Congrats. That's awesome. He says, I always visually evaluate vehicles in the drive-thru. I noticed the Chevy Cruze, Sonic, and some Malibus have the radiator fan is always working overtime. Is that normal? Well, I mean, you're in Florida, so it's probably a little bit of a tougher life for the radiator fans there than other parts of the country. But there are some cars that are just louder with their fans where you notice it more. And I think that's certainly part of it as well, because there's some cars even these days, like new press cars where I have, where I'm like, man, those are some loud fans. I think the Toyota fans are pretty loud. And like some of them that had like the older engines, like the old Forerunner, the old Land Cruiser. I mean, like they have like really loud fans that like are directly tied to the throttle, where it's like you hit the gas and you hear like the fan and the engine kind of revving up at the same speed almost. But even like some of the Volkswagens, they have like really loud fans, and like the Audis are another one. I mean, like whenever I always have like the RS Audis, like the RS7, RS6 Avant and stuff I've had in the past few years. I mean, one, the fans stay on for like 10 minutes after you park a car. I mean, it's like those things get so hot and those fans are just working like crazy. But they, I guess because they're always just on in those vehicles, I'm always encountering them. I'm like, man, like Volkswagen Group, their fans are working hard, it seems. And they just, I guess, put out a ton of heat with those motors and the packaging and all that. But yeah, it's kind of, I think, depends on the company. It's a great question though. And Sean says, is a used Mach-E GT a good value? I see them just under 40 with low miles. Yeah, I mean, pricing always does come down to, what it's worth to you and what you're cross shopping it with. But yeah, there's some really cheap deals on Mach-E GTs out there. I mean, used ones. I think, like I kind of said whenever I got rid of the Mach-E in that video, this resale has rebounded. I mean, literally last year, our Mach-E was worth 20 grand. And again, it rebounded to 28 and a half, which is what we traded it in for. But like, yeah, I think we've maybe for the time being passed the peak of those. It'd be interesting to see what happens to electric car pricing on the used market here, because there's a $4,000 credit right now for anything under, I think, 25 grand, and that's going away September 30th as well. But for anything above that, there isn't any credit in play there. So we're going to see, as the new stuff goes up in price because of not having the credits, you're going to see more people go to the used market, which will drive up demand and therefore prices. So I'm envisioning that used EVs will go up in value in the short term and price in the short term. We're also seeing just used cars in general are starting to uptick again, as we're seeing inflation starting to start to come back a little bit here. The used car market's starting to come up a little bit as well. So I mean, it's been very tiny with the percentage of increase so far, but I envision things getting more expensive. So probably still in a pretty good sweet spot here as far as pricing right now. So I'd probably say, I mean, again, I haven't looked at GT values in particular recently to say for those exactly. I do know we're doing some pretty good lease deals on those as well. But again, and that was kind of the thing, is I think like the difference between the Mach-E Premium and the GT for the 2025 as far as leasing wasn't a huge difference. But that's another one where like, it would have been tempting, but the packaging just isn't good. Like it had Alcantara seats, which we didn't want. And just a few of the little things in that interior that just, were not ideal. But I've seen also some people getting out of some people have really done a good job of hacking Mach-E GT leases. And I know on Lease Hacker, I even saw someone trying to get rid of their Mach-E GT. And I think it was like something like $550 a month or something like that. They're leasing them for. So I guess, it might be worth it. I don't know how you feel about leasing, Sean, but, at least get a price quote for a new Mach-E GT before September 30th and see what that price, is. And then, see it, because the thing that's hard about recommending used EVs to anybody to buy still is like, yes, that was a car that was $60-some thousand, and now it's under 40. So someone's taking a nice hit on depreciation. You're avoiding that. So you have dodged the biggest bullet, but will they depreciate more? If we continue to see this war on EVs, if they start to raise the registration fees even more, or they try to, do some executive order to shut down chargers or something. I mean, they could do all kinds of stuff potentially, and it could totally mess with the values of these cars. I mean, again, these are, far-fetched worst case scenarios, but, if they make the conditions more challenging for EVs, you may see prices continue to drop. And also as we see these evolutions in batteries, Mach-E GT is, maybe going to hold its value pretty well for the next year or two. But what about, next gen Mach-E that maybe comes in either cheaper or has way more range and just makes the current one look like a complete antique? If you have zero demand for that old one when everyone's wowed by the new one, it could really still go further down, and you could still, okay, you buy it for 39 grand now. If it's worth 20 in 2 more years, unless you have a pretty nice, sized payment, you could be underwater, or get behind on that. So, it's just one of those things where I'm still just nervous. This is why I know people say like, oh, like leasing is, bad idea. But I think for EVs, it truly is the safest bet. Because, again, we got lucky with the Mach-E rebounding in value, but like if it had stayed at that 20 grand price that it was worth last year, I mean, walking away from that, being able to walk away from that would have saved us big time. And so that's kind of the nice thing about leasing is, there's no unknowns there as far as value. You don't care what happens to the value because you walk away from it, and, it doesn't matter as long as you got your pricing locked in, you're happy with that. Nothing else changes, nothing else can, throw you a curveball. So that's still why I hesitate. We could have bought a Lyric for probably 30 grand, 35 grand or whatever, a used one. But again, I don't know where that's going. Is it going to depreciate larger than leasing the new one? Maybe not, I don't know, but it's also the difference of a used versus new and all the other things. But so anyway, long answer, I apologize, but I'm still a little leery of used EVs from a pricing standpoint. And Miles says, it's been a while, but how's the 500e doing? It's doing great. Yeah, I'm actually surprised. There's a lot of people keep asking how it's doing. I'll be doing a POV video, driving it and just kind of, doing that here to give a little bit of new content on the 500e. But otherwise, it only has 750 miles on it, and there's nothing to talk about because it's been flawless. I'm totally happy with it. I have no new thoughts to add since I picked it up. I'm still very happy with it. And so again, it's one of those things where it doesn't make for good content. And it's not great. I really should just be buying like V12 Jags and just like having thumbnails of me on the side of the road all the time to really like be good for this channel from a content standpoint, because everything I'm buying is very uneventful and boring. But yeah, no, 500e is just chugging along great. I wish I had more opportunities to drive it because it is truly so much fun just to whip around and, squeeze into tight parking spaces and all that. It's a fun little car. And every time I take it out for a drive, it still puts a smile on my face. But yeah, obviously not enough miles to really do any hard testing on it, but I've driven it in very high heat. It's been fine in that. And it's just been, serving its purpose perfectly of being that backup car when I need it, being the airport runner when I need it, for the press trips I go on and stuff. And it's just been really great so far. So knock on wood, hopefully it continues to be uneventful, but yeah, just not enough miles to really, push it too much. And B Mitchell says fit and finish isn't perfect. Welcome to GM ownership. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually surprised though, because I know the press cars, people have this assumption that GM goes over them with a fine tooth comb, or any company does. And I don't know if they do or not. But I've had press cars that aren't perfect, but the Lyric that I had last year, fit and finish wise, was flawless. So, no rattles, no other, issues. So I was a little surprised by that. Again, it doesn't bother me, but it's something, obviously it's a brand new car and I don't want it to, have annoyances already. So I am going to, look into it if these aren't things that I can resolve on my own, but, that's funny. And he also says drink, because I mentioned, GR Corolla. I was actually thinking about bringing on some whiskey here tonight, just to toast the Mach-E and also toast the departure of the Acura TLX. I don't know if you guys saw that this week. Brief little aside here for a minute if you want. That's something that's I would have covered in a weekly update. Someone was asking if I was going to do like a dedicated video on that, and I just don't think it's worth doing. But I will say here that I am really surprised they got rid of TLX, because they literally just refreshed it last year. I had the refresh TLX. I mean, it was a very mild refresh, but they did do the little tweaks to it last year, and I did the Type S review, and I still love it. I think it was great. They did the tweaks of the transmission that made it better. And I was like, this is great. And, the fact that they did that last year and then are now killing it off so quickly, it makes it seem like it wasn't always part of the plan. Like it's something that they kind of did a knee-jerk reaction to for some reason. I mean, if you look at the sales breakdown of Acura car sales, it has been dropping pretty aggressively. Integra is still doing really well, but TLX just like really dropped off badly for some reason. And so I don't know, I know there's also the talk that they are clearing out that production area because they need to do the EVs. But surely that was something that was always in the plans and in the cards. So why would they bother doing the TLX changes last year if they always were planning on getting rid of it this year? That's just, nobody does a refresh for one model year, even minor changes. It's not done. It's just because it's a waste of money and time. So there must be something going on behind the scenes as far as TLX that caused them to pull the plug early. I just don't know why, because I love TLX. That's on my list of like, if I needed, a dad car that was just something I'm getting for myself. TLX is actually, one of my favorites. I love it. Fantastic stereo, fantastic looks, great handling, great ride, great comfort, not a ton of space. That's, I think, part of the downfall of it. But I thought TLX was always awesome and underappreciated. And it's sad that they literally have Integra now, and that's it. I mean, they're gonna have. I'm hoping they do accurate versions of the Honda EVs, the 0 Series or whatever. But I don't know if they will or not. So in the meantime, Integra is going it alone, which is crazy. And let me see here. Want to make sure I'm not too far behind. Sorry, I missed a couple other super chats. So Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, notice the sound system, radio, Bluetooth, etc., lowers when the brake is pressed. Is that a safety thing, or am I crazy? So I'm not sure if you mean like the volume lowers on your car. I'm not sure. I mean, I know there are some cars where there's a speed sensitive setting you can turn on and off, which will match the volume to the speed of the car to keep it consistent. So you may notice that it's louder at higher speeds, and then you slow down to a stop, and it lowers the volume. But if it's when the brake is pressed, there shouldn't be any direct correlation as far as that goes. So I'm not sure. You might want to have your dealer look into that, but I have no clue how that could even be possible of those two things being connected. Again, unless it's just the speed sensitive thing you're noticing there. But I mean, you've had your cars for a long time, so it shouldn't be a new thing unless some little setting got bumped somehow and turned itself on. That's interesting. I wish I had a better answer for you there, but that's a mystery to me. And Confirmation, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, I'm a V12 Jag owner and I just caught a stray. Well, congrats on being a V12 Jag owner. That's respectable and awesome. And sounds like you have the prime opportunity to make a very profitable YouTube channel. You should consider it. Like I said, I think last week, if I could, find a spare 30 grand or so, I would totally pick up an Aston Martin DB9 Volante with a V12, and for better or for worse, just ride the waves of whatever that ownership experience brought me. And it would, again, be great YouTube content. I can't take a 30 grand gamble right now because it's my luck. I mean, which thankfully I guess is good luck, but if with my luck, it would be like flawless, it would have nothing happen to it. And then that would also be not generating any content either. But that's awesome. V12 Jag, kudos to you. And let me see. So Brandon's asking, are we getting a new Mazda 3? There's no word about that yet. I haven't seen any spy shots. As far as Mazda's product cadence, Mazda 3 is up next. It should logically be the next one to get a new version after CX-5 here. But I think there may be a higher priority put on CX-30 to keep that fresh. So I wouldn't be surprised if CX-30 jumps the line and that goes next for a redo and then Mazda 3, but I could be wrong. I did see there was a rumor or something that it was going to get bigger for Mazda 3, which is an obvious, thing, especially with judging by what we saw with CX-5. but I didn't hear, when that would be coming. But it, logic would suggest that that's coming in the next year or two. But I don't think there's been any kind of even credible, solid report to really bank on. So, you might be waiting longer. We'll see. And Colby says, Matt, do you think the next time you have a car with advanced self-driving tech, could you do a POV on it, maybe driving in light to moderate traffic in Harrisburg, a real-world longer use of it? Well, Harrisburg's about 3.5 hours away from me, so that wouldn't probably work. But as far as Pittsburgh, I could do that. The thing about the self-driving stuff in traffic that I don't love, I mean, light to moderate, I could totally do, but if we're talking like stop and go kind of stuff, there's just too much of a safety factor built into those systems to make it enjoyable for me, because they always leave a giant gap and people always exploit those gaps. Every time I've done even Super Cruise, which is, my favorite as far as advanced stuff goes, you're in traffic with Super Cruise, eventually it will inch up. But if you're in like, you get that, moderate traffic where you're maybe going a little quicker, but the car still needs sufficient distance, to do braking. Every single time, if you give someone a car length or more, they're going to try and squeeze in on you, so like it's, that's why, a lot of times especially in the past, I was trying to really test these systems. I'm like, oh, well, this is called traffic jam support. I'm going to use it in a traffic jam. And then I do. And then I'm like, yeah, this works great if you're in a traffic jam where everyone is good natured and never tries to cut in and cut in line. But for me, like, I don't know about you guys, every once in a while I'll let someone in, it's kind of one of those, like, as on a per case basis, but like, I hate people that cut in line in traffic. And so like, I'm right there on the person's bumper, making sure no one's sneaking in and trying to, cut. So I don't love using the adaptive systems, in those types of situations. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying as far as, if like next time I have a car Super Cruise, maybe doing, some Super Cruise driving POV style, I think would be very cool to do that. As long as it's not in any kind of grueling traffic. But I think, yeah, just kind of showing how it, can pass people on the highway and things like that would be really cool. Cause yeah, I mean, I've shown that in reviews, but not from a POV standpoint. So I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I should be at some point getting a Lyric V here as a press vehicle, and also the Vistic I think is going to be coming at some point. So I should have a few new Cadillac Super Cruises here later this year that I can do that with. And so thanks for requesting that, because I probably would have just done a regular video as far as POV, but I will take those on the highway and do super cruising, and any others that are more advanced. I can, try that as well. That's a cool idea. So thank you for the suggestion, Colby. And Harsha says, did you hear that Marvel is going to reboot the MCU? I think I heard that. I don't know if that's been a rumor that's been around for a while or what, but I don't really follow the Marvel universe anymore. So I just don't have time to watch movies half the time either. I haven't even been to the movie theater since, I think we went to, because I think the last time was when we went to Wicked last year. That was, I think, the last movie I've seen in the theaters. So yeah, but I hadn't heard that. That's crazy. It's not a world that I follow. But they have very little creativity in Hollywood anymore. So anything they can just regurgitate, they're gonna do, because it's a safe, business prospect, and that's all I care about, sadly, most of the time. And Ryan says, hi Matt, what's your thoughts on the 2022 HRV Sport, like on reliability? Should be pretty solid. I mean, that naturally aspirated motor, I mean, it's a naturally aspirated Honda motor. I would have full confidence in a car like that. The CVT also at this point has already, been kind of worked through, so I don't think you need to worry about that really either. Just make sure you stay on top of your maintenances. But I think a HRV would be a very solid bet from a reliability standpoint. That's a car that I'd have confidence driving. I have no doubts you'd be able to get, 300,000 miles out of it easily. So yeah, I think that's a really good choice if you're worried about reliability. And let me see. Nicholas says, hey Matt, do you think there's a chance that the new Lexus sports car has a manual option? No, I don't think so. I mean, never say never. Toyota's crazy enough that they could, push it through. Akio could say he really wanted it, and that's that. I haven't I haven't watched any of the videos of it running around Goodwood or anything to see if there's any giveaways there. I'm sure there would have been reports if people heard it sounding like a manual. So I'm sure it's probably an automatic. I just don't know, as far as the motor and the powertrain, what automatic they could use either. So I guess there's a fair shot of a manual too, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bet on it. Maybe it's something they could add later on, like they did with Supra, possibly as well. It just kind of depends, but I think that's just kind of a homologation special. They're all going to probably be sold out pretty quick and everything. So there's probably not a whole lot of need to do anything crazier with it or spend any extra money beyond what they need to. But we'll see. I'd love to see that, but I wouldn't bet on that personally. And let me see. Nightbreaker, thank you so much for a super chat. Apologies, I missed these super chats. YouTube is not good at letting me know about them. But Nightbreaker says, "Hey Matt, is it possible to increase my Mazda 3's horsepower?" Absolutely. There's always things you can do to increase horsepower. And really a good wealth of information. Is going to be anyone that's, if there's a YouTube channel out there that is modified Mazda 3s, but also just like Reddit. There's probably a subreddit for Mazda 3, forums, Facebook groups, those types of things you can kind of discuss with others that have done it. What are the best choices as far as doing X, Y, and Z. And you can even make a post on those pages or whatever and say, hey, I'm looking to get more horsepower out of my Mazda 3. What's the best bang for buck there? I just aside from the basic stuff, you can always recommend. Usually a cold air intake can give you, a few horsepower, possibly exhaust can give you a few horsepower. It's just that these days those systems are so efficient and advanced that you don't get the kind of gains you got, 15, 20, 30 years ago where they were so restrictive and you just, do an exhaust and you instantly have a bunch of power. There's less return there these days. And if you're talking about an actually aspirated Mazda 3, then there's not a whole lot to do as far as tunes. Versus a turbo one, obviously you can very easily turn up the boost on that, I'm sure. Yeah, so I think, you can do a little bit there, but it just comes down to, again, like what your circumstance is. If you're after power in a Mazda 3 and you don't have the turbo already, I would probably just work towards, saving up for the turbo and trying to make that leap into the turbo version at some point, because then you're going to get OEM quality. And you get that, really huge boosted power, 320 pound-feet of torque, and you get it with, a warranty. You get it with, again, OEM quality, and that's usually, personally the way I go is I say just, go factory as much as you can, and then, once you've reached the limit of what the factory offers in the lineup, then that's when you can go to the aftermarket if you still need more. But that's kind of the way I go now. If you do have a turbo one, okay, I see you said you just have the non-turbo. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot. Yeah, and so that's, I mean, I guess maybe there's aftermarket turbo options for those if you want to put your own turbo on. But again, by the time you do a turbo kit and get it installed and tuned and dialed in, you're probably not that far off from just getting a Mazda 3 turbo. I don't know if you looked at used ones much. I do every once in a while just because I think it's it's a very much appealing like alternative to the GTI and stuff, in my opinion. And you can get like a still fairly nice, under 60,000 mile Mazda 3 turbo hatch. I mean, I don't know, I haven't looked in the past few months, but earlier this year when I looked, you could pick one up for like mid to low 20s for a car that was 35 grand brand new. That's a pretty good deal. So, again, I don't know what your budget is, but to me, mid to low 20s for something like that, I would just, be trying to work towards, trading up instead of, doing anything aftermarket. But if you really love the car, you want to stick with it, you have an attachment to it, whatever, there's minor little things. But really, I think, the best way to maximize performance in a car like that, where you don't have a whole lot of bandwidth with the motor, is to just focus on the other things you can improve more significantly. Do better tires, do better suspension so you can, hang in the corners better. Do those types of things really, I think, are going to give you more noticeable and more appreciable performance improvements. Now, if you live in a place where you don't have corners and it's just, arrow straight roads everywhere you go, then again, I'd say just try and, trade up to the turbo at some point if you can. But hopefully it helped you a little bit. And thanks so much for the super chat. And Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, thoughts on $90 billion being spent on nuclear power plants in Pennsylvania? Could that energy trickle down to EV charging? Well, I think, like the nuclear thing is clearly being driven by the fact that there's just greater power needs, primarily from crypto and from AI. Those two things are enormous electricity drains, and that's the main reason why and why they're rushing to the nuclear, because they need to ramp up power production very fast to keep up with AI and crypto. And so that's kind of the easy way to do it, is just turn on these nuclear plants again. And so yeah, that will certainly help with, just supplying all the electricity, including EV charging. But EV charging is a very minor burden on the grid. I know that's an easy talking point for anti-EV folks. But when you look at like the studies and you look at even like, places that do have power shortages, like sometimes in California in the middle of the summer when everyone's blasting their AC all day. Even in those kinds of situations, EVs are not the make it or break it thing that's causing these systems to cripple. There's again these far more burdensome things. I'd have to look into the exact numbers, but I mean it's crazy just how again just the two things of AI and crypto just dwarf. I mean, it just completely overshadows everything else that's that's sucking down power. So yeah, I mean, I have to say nuclear is the lesser of the two evils. I'd rather see them do nuclear personally than fire up a bunch of coal plants and, just burn everything in sight. So, to me, I don't love it still because, there is still some risk and there's still some waste. Obviously, much less waste, but, you've got to do something with, with the radioactive waste. And, so there's some of those things, but I mean, yeah, it's just apparently everyone's hell-bent on doing AI and crypto and not caring about the environmental impact of those two things. And so, it's either we have power outages or we fire up the nuclear stuff. And so that's what we're doing in the name of AI and crypto. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, they're firing up the ones here in PA, and I'm sure everywhere else they can feasibly do it. They're going to try and do it too. And Gregory, thank you so much for a super chat there. And I see a few questions or comments here discussing the Mazda 3 there. He says, I can't buy a Mazda 3 or a Civic because the Civic doesn't have satellite radio anymore. And the Mazda 3, you have to buy the most expensive one to get the satellite radio. But yeah, that's unfortunate the way they package that. I don't know why Mazda makes Sirius this exclusive thing. And Civic, yeah, it's a bummer. I think, if you really want to stick to new, I guess that does kind of put you in a tough spot. Used versions of either of those obviously kind of sidesteps that problem. And I'm trying to think what else you could do. I mean, you could find a 2025 Integra. I don't know if Integra is beyond but if you can find a leftover Integra, especially now 2026s are coming out, the 2026s get that new software, I believe, but I don't think the 2025s have that. So you might be able to still get satellite radio in the Integra possibly. So that would be another alternative. And let me see what else you could do. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just all the other competitors, like Nissan Sentra is still really nice. You can get Impreza, those types of things. So there's obviously lots of others in that segment that are great. Elantra is really nice. So that has satellite radio, I think, is standard. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's unfortunate because Mazda 3 and Civic are the two best in the segment. It's kind of weird the way they have that. I mean, I will say, with the Civic, we worked around this because actually we had the ADX and we drove to the beach in the ADX and we had to have satellite radio and that car does not have it. And so my workaround was, again, just to download the SiriusXM app on my phone and then run it through CarPlay. And I was able to listen to satellite radio, basically the whole time uninterrupted, with CarPlay. Now that's requiring a data connection and burning through your, mobile data. So not a perfect workaround, but if you're someone who has unlimited data or whatever, and you always have good service everywhere you drive, might not be a bad workaround. Just comes down to, again, how you feel about all that. But let me see here. So where were we? So Chad says, did you see the car explode in a parking lot, I think in Virginia? I didn't hear about that. That's crazy. I'll have to look into that. I know here in Pittsburgh a few years ago, there was a Hyundai Veloster that just like exploded in a parking lot. And it was just a guy who wired up explosives in his car for himself and just offed himself with in a spectacular fashion. So that's the only thing I've ever actually seen a car like actually exploding like that, aside from a car accident or something like that. But spontaneous combustion usually isn't something that happens, in any kind of cars, unless there's some other kind of thing that's causing that. Vishal says, what's up, Matt? Missed the live stream. Happy to be here. Thanks for stopping by, Vishal, and appreciate it. And Ryan says, congrats on the car. Nice to get full tax credit before it sadly goes away. Enjoy it. We're planning on a first EV early next year, likely used. Nice. Well, best of luck on your shopping experience there. I'll be curious to see again where prices go next year, but best of luck with that, and thanks so much. Yeah, it's unfortunate about the credit going away, but we'll see if it ever returns. Probably won't, but it'd be nice if it did. And see, Electrify says appreciation is crazy for EVs, so leasing's the most obvious choice. Yeah, but the amount of people, it's still are like, why would you lease anything? It's terrible. And it's like, especially for stuff like the Lyriq, I think you still get some of the tax credit if you buy. But I think they're usually over the price cap. So I don't think you get it unless you lease. So it's like, if you want the discount at all, you have to lease. And some people actually do a lease and then immediately buy it out if they really want to own it. But that's usually not even a good idea either. But leasing is definitely the way to go for EVs. And Vishal says the Lyriq's a great choice, by the way. I've always liked how they look. And on camera, the color looks blue, even though it's a green color. It almost, like the finance guy, when I was talking to him when I was signing the papers, he was like, it almost seems like a kind of a teal color. And I don't think it's quite teal, but it's not far off. It's a very interesting color. And Beth and I were just admiring it. It was sitting in the sun today, and we were both like, man, it's such a pretty color. I'm just so glad the Cadillac actually has some nice colors. And I see, Vishal asking about the TLX, so I'm glad I discussed that. I was able to answer that question before I even knew it was out there. So, he says, well, I'm sad to see it go. They really screwed up the space of that car. It makes no sense how an Integra has more space. Yeah, that was really the problem. They went too crazy with the styling as far as doing the super long nose. And then they just kind of ran out of space. I guess they didn't want to go bigger for the second half of the car. So they kind of, compromised there. And that's a big killer for car success. That's part of, I think, Mazda 3 and CX-30 struggle. Same deal. Small back seat, people just don't want to do a small back seat anymore. I don't blame them. Especially when you got stuff like Chevy Trax with a giant back seat for $23,000. Why settle? So I totally get it. And E85 says, hey, saw a Lightning EV out there today. Nice. I think the Lightning is another fantastic lease deal right now. If we needed or wanted a truck and it fit in the garage, there's people getting Lightnings for like $400 a month right now with the leases on those. So another fantastic deal out there. Get them while they're hot. Jordan says, would it make sense financially to purchase the first hybrid version of the Maverick and let the recalls play out? I think I haven't seen any of the recent recalls for Maverick, but I think everything that I have seen, I haven't seen any giant issues with Maverick Hybrid. They've been out for several years now, so I think anything that would have happened has already happened. So I think a Maverick is not a vehicle I'd worry about reliability wise, especially the hybrid, because that hybrid system still dates back to the Escape hybrid taxi cabs from the past 20, almost 25 years now. So they're pretty solid. I wouldn't worry about that powertrain personally. And so, yeah, I think Mavericks are a really safe bet from a reliability standpoint. And B. Mitchell says, remember, Lincoln also had the MKLT and F-150 and drag. I'd never heard of that one. They were a hard sell since I actually buy and use trucks. That market would rather spend 100 grand on a King Ranch than a Lincoln. Yeah, I suppose so. But if they're willing to spend 100 grand on a King Ranch, yes, there's the people that actually want to do real work, but then the people who just use it to drive back and forth to work in, some office or something. Like, I think those are the kinds of people that would, go for the Lincoln. I mean, at least, in like Texas, where every other vehicle is an F-150, surely, they could, throw together 100,000 sales of those a year or something. I think it still could make sense. Who knows? But he says, yeah, I did it with GMC versus Cadillac. It really does come down to how people use their trucks. But I think for the crowd that has a pristine tow hitch that, never sees mud or anything, like those are the ones I think could definitely go for those luxury trucks. Vishal says, I think I may unlock some core memories for people with my cool spot this week. A Ford Aerostar. Haven't seen one of those in maybe 15 years. That's impressive that you've seen one on the road, because speaking of reliability, that is a car that I would not have any confidence in lasting anything into the 21st century, honestly, is kind of impressive. That's wild. Yeah, nice spot. I'm curious the condition that one was in. And people said, call it the forced blue collar look. That, and a lot of those guys write them off for their businesses. Yeah, that's true. And I think that's also part of the incentive why, again, if you have a luxury one, the same way, there's people that are writing off, their G-Wagons because it, is over the GVRW for the exemption or whatever. There's those types of things where it's like, would they rather have something softer than a G-Wagon? Maybe, but, it fits the write-off criteria, and so they just get them for that reason and get them almost for free in a way, because of all the write-offs. Confirmation says the Corvair would have been an awesome car with a rotary. That would have been fun. Yeah, I mean the flat 6, I think that had, right, it was already a crazy motor in of itself. But yeah, if GM dabbled in rotaries, that would have been wild. And E85 says GM bought Corvair. That's why they were so expensive from Europe. Interesting. I didn't know Corvair came from Europe. That's cool. And BM said, was it an early or late model Corvair? I don't recall the model year. I think it was an earlier model year. I want to say it was like a 63 or 64. I could be wrong. I don't even know if that's the model year they had the Corvair, but I feel like it was, my recollection was early 60s. It was not late 60s, I don't think. So yeah. And Vishal says, as someone with 2 Volkswagens at the house, I can attest to the loud fans that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, so yeah, it's really funny how it's just different brands do things differently. And Ryan says, yeah, I have a 2023 4Runner, possibly the last vehicle sold in the U.S. with a mechanical fan. The fan roar on startup is classically 4Runner. Yeah, that is really a signature thing. You're right. And it does give it some charm for sure. And I see Dave says most cars have the radiator fans on whenever the AC is on. So Florida. Okay, yeah. I didn't know that they were connected to the AC sometime, or at least just kind of programmed to come on at the same time. That's interesting. Gregory says, have you driven or liked the Optic? Yes, I did a review on Optic a couple of months ago. Really was impressed with it. Aside from not having CarPlay, it's pretty much perfect in my opinion. Like, it's really good, and it's a phenomenal value. Again, especially right now. I like Optic a lot. Highly recommend. And check out my review on it if you want to hear all my thoughts. And Luke says, is your Fiat lease 2 or 3 years? It would stink if it was up at a similar time to the Lyriq. A lot of decision making. Yeah, so thankfully the Fiat, because that one, especially $130 a month, I was like, give me this lease as long as humanly possible. So I actually did 42 months on that lease, which I'm very excited that it was that long. So that one is not up until the summer of 2028. So almost lasts me until the election. So, but yeah, so that one, thankfully, will be actually a year after Lyriq is done. I'll still have another year with a Fiat there. And then So that'll space that out a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier on the credit hits, on the credit report to not be doing two purchases possibly. We'll have to see, how things play out. It's so far off that who knows where I'll be, where the country will be, where everything will be in 2028 by that point. But I think the buyout on the Fiat, because it's in the contract already, I think it's like 16 grand and change, and I'm assuming by the time 2028 rolls around, I'll have less than 10,000 miles on it still, and so that's going to be a very good purchase. So I am fairly certain I will buy that car out. Now, whether I keep it or I just turn around and sell it and pocket the equity, I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know. And I really love it. We'll see how it holds up. But if it continues to treat me well, continues to be a great backup car, I could very easily see myself, if I have the same kind of situation of just needing a backup car, of just buying that for 16 grand. And as much as I love a GR Corolla or something like that, if everything else is way more expensive and, a good bit more than 16 grand, chances are I'll go for my, pristine low mile, 500e for 16 grand instead. That's going to be, I'm sure by 2028, the idea of a $16,000 car is going to be like a non-existent unicorn at that point. So, I'm going to probably stick with it for a long time. We'll see. And Ryan says, I hope used prices stay suppressed for a moment. We want a cheap Mini Cooper SE. Friend bought a 2023 for 17 grand out the door with the used credit. That's a nice deal. Would love a similar deal, except we don't qualify for the credit. I thought the credit was now a non-qualification thing, because it's just a discount at the time of purchase. So I didn't think, because it used to be that, you had to be under a certain income level and all, this, that, and the other. But I thought it was basically for everybody. I could be wrong. But that's a really good deal on a Mini Cooper. I didn't know the SEs had dropped that low. The lowest I saw an SE for, because I considered that path whenever I was getting the 500E. The cheapest I saw an SE for was like, I think 23 or 24 grand. I wish they were cheaper, because I would have totally rocked the Cooper SE. That was kind of, again, one of my top front runners before the Fiat. And it became very apparent that I wasn't going to beat 130 bucks a month. And even, like, if you can finance 17 grand, even if you do a 72-month term or something, I still think that's going to be way over 130 a month. So that's why, again, it was just like unbeatable with a Fiat. And Ryan, if you do want a Cooper, again, if you're open to flexibility, the Fiat is not as good of a handler, not as nice of an interior as the Mini. Excuse me, but it's really cheap and does a similar kind of purpose, same kind of size and stuff like that. So and there's still lots of deals out there I think there's still a bunch of 2024s on dealer lots. I think there's still some pretty good deals out there. People are getting desperate, to get rid of them before the tax credit again, because that's a car no one's going to touch without the credit, because it's 34 grand sticker for that thing, and no one is paying that. That's why they were desperate enough to give it to me for 130 bucks a month. Gregory also says the Mach-E Rally looks really cool. Yeah, it's very bold with the styling on that one. Not something I think personally I could live with on a daily basis, but for those who just want something that's a little wilder, or maybe coming off like a Focus RS or something, it could be a fun step up for someone like that. And Jordan says, to get a sweet deal on leasing, do you have to have an immaculate credit score? Typically, yes. To get the best deal, you need to have tier 1 credit. Now you can still get a good lease deal with tier 2 or tier 3. It's just that your payment does go up, because with a lease you still have an interest rate that factors in, and that interest rate goes up. That's why the pricing goes up there. So yes, if you want the best lease deal possible, you got to have I think it's at least 700 credit score, probably higher. But it depends on the brand too. Some brands have a different threshold for what's top tier for them. Some I think are even closer, like 750 they need to be at before you get that. And that also comes down to like how desperate the company is to like keep the sales going, because with leasing, you're usually doing it through the captive finance arm of that brand, and like they they want to make the deal because they want to move the car. So they don't want financing to get in the way of that deal being completed. So, they're probably a little more lax with the approvals and stuff like that. But again, if you are not a high enough credit score, they're going to want to make you pay a little more for the interest there. So that is the only unfortunate thing. It is kind of a privileged thing in a way to get a really good lease deal because it just assumes you have really good credit. But again, there still are deals to be had even if you don't have pristine credit, on leases, because it's still one of those things where even if you are financing, that same credit score, you're going to be paying a higher rate there as well. So, again, because of the really good lease deals on the EVs, you're able to still just get more car than you probably would have with whatever your credit score is, and so that's kind of why I think either way, it's still probably going to be beneficial and still could give you, a better deal than what you could get either way. And Mystical says, how are you enjoying the lyrics so far? We're loving it so far. Yeah. You had it about a week now, actually. And it's just been really fun to own so far. And again, Beth and I are just both kind of like pinching ourselves and both just really excited that it actually, was able to work out and that everything just kind of fell into place. And Jordan says, I know you like to leave politics out of the conversation, but do you see EV PHEV hybrid sales start to increase towards the end of 2028? Well, it's going to take a little bit of time to reverse things if we're assuming that, it flips blue for everything in, the next election. Because, well, for one, we don't have the next president even coming in until January of 2029. And then, it comes down to also how Congress and House are, at that point, as far as whether they can just float everything through or if there's going to be resistance that tries to stop stuff that the next president wants to do, so there's all those types of things that are, potentially in the way of that stuff. And again, once you take away credits, it's really hard to bring them back. So I really don't see EV tax credits ever coming back. There could be other incentives for EVs, or at least knocking off some of these BS fees and stuff and disincentivizing that's, starting to happen here. And I think that we'll see, some kind of fuel economy standards probably come back. But again, those things do take time. So, I could see that the car companies could want to time things for themselves so that they have stuff coming online in 2029 to be prepared and ready, for the 2030s, whenever we do have, some kind of rules again for emissions. But that kind of stuff is going to take time to undo all this stuff, and that's going to be kind of the thing, is just untangling this giant mess is going to be, a long process. The amount of things already, and we're 6 months in here. By the time we get to 2029, again, it's going to be a lot of work, I think, so that's why I think it's going to be not something that's going to happen overnight. And that's why, again, I'm trying to future-proof myself as long as possible here. Two, thank you so much for a super chat, and happy to see you here. He says, I'm guessing Daddy Akio didn't want to give you a GR Corolla. Also just lost my Camry. RIP. I'm sorry to hear about the Camry. That really sucks. Not sure if you want to share, what happened, but that always sucks to lose a car. I hope you're okay, and everyone else involved is okay, if it was an accident or what. But sorry to hear that, and hope everything goes smoothly as far as insurance and finding something new. That really sucks. Hope you're doing okay. As far as Daddy Akio, not giving me a GR Corolla. Yep, unfortunately, no GR Corollas have been offered. Maybe someday I'll keep on dreaming about it. But in the meantime, nothing there. And if Beth was into like the BZ4X or something, it could have been something I could have inquired with Toyota and see, if they had a discount, like how Cadillac, can give me the 1,000 off on the Lyric. I'm sure Toyota would have helped me out there a little bit, but just again, nothing there that Beth was excited about, honestly. So that's kind of why it just wasn't an avenue that we went too far down. Let me see. And thank you again too for the super chat, and let us know if you need any help with figuring out your next car you want or whatever. But hope you're doing okay. And let me see. Um, where were we here? Um, so Gregory says, I think the reason the Cadillac EVs are so good now is because they're coming for Tesla. Yeah, I mean, I think, it was just one of these things where I think GM, they were a little more primed for this whole thing than everybody else was, as far as, you know, if you look back and your GM history, I mean, they had the EV1 back in the 90s, that they were experimenting with EVs back then. The same way, like, they had the first touchscreen in a Buick in the 80s. I mean, like crazy stuff. They've always kind of had an eye to the future and had strangely kind of a crystal ball in a way. Sometimes the timing's been way off, so they got a fuzzy crystal ball, but they do seem to have an actual crystal ball. Sometimes the GM with the visionary stuff that they really do come up with, where it's like, when you look back at it, it's like, wow, like they really predicted that. And so, but as far as the, Cadillac EV is doing so well, I think, again, it's a combination of being priced well, which is a change for Cadillac. A lot of times the GM products were always so expensive and they relied on giant incentives to get any kind of sales. But like, even at sticker price, they're totally justifiable in my opinion, and just because of how nice they are. But also, just like, I think GM knew what Americans wanted from an EV, and they knew that, especially for Cadillac, they needed bling, and that's what we love. I mean, this Lyric's got super soft, comfy seats. I mean, they probably haven't made soft seats like this in a Cadillac, in at least 20 years. I mean, it's super plush. There's metal, there's wood, there's, and a lot of metal switches, and then you have all the tech you need. Very impressive with a big 33-inch curved display. It's an impressive in just all the right ways. 300 miles of range. I think this is why Equinox EV is selling so well, because even like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and all these others, they're 250 odd miles or whatever. Maybe 300 for the rear-wheel drive version or whatever. But like, Equinox, they're like, one, we need to have this thing be front wheel drive because everyone's used to front wheel drive, and that's been a smart move for everyone that has done that, I think, versus all these rear wheel drive based things, which are great for enthusiasts, but for the average person, if you're in Pittsburgh here, you tell someone, oh, I'm trying to sell you a rear wheel drive car, they'll say, oh no, what about the wintertime? And they just, it's like, you must have a Subaru or else you're going to die in the wintertime. And so, I think them at least offering the front wheel drive really helps. But I think, Equinox as standard 300 plus miles of range in an economy kind of package, that's what people were after. And I think, that's the kind of stuff that really helped GM to kind of go the next step beyond the Nissan Leafs of the world and things like that were always just, range was always the like, the compromise thing. And you don't have the compromise with the GM stuff because they just loaded it with a crap load of batteries. And I think that's, the right way to do it for Americans, instead of having these global cars where it's like, well, everyone else in the rest of the world buys what they need, not what they think they may one day need for their cross-country road trip. And obviously, we have more miles to cover in America as well. So there's some legitimacy to that concern. But, Americans are just not known for buying the necessities. It's always about overindulgence and over preparedness and all this stuff. And so I think, GM understood that and we're like, okay, well, people don't need 300 miles, but they want 300 miles. So we give them 300 miles. And I think those types of things are why they're really coming out ahead. And I think GM is actually very well positioned. Rivian's CEO is talking about this as well with, if companies start to backpedal or they start to, get, a little reluctant as far as the EV rollouts, and they're going to be way behind the second the political winds shift. They're all going to be caught, without any good products. And I think GM is committed to this. And yes, they are also doing new V8 production and a next generation V8 for their trucks and stuff. And they can be in both worlds the same way Toyota, doesn't have to have an all EV lineup. They can do the hybrids and the plug-in hybrids and still make a great improvement in emissions and still meet people where they are. And I think GM's kind of doing that in a slightly different way with being like, okay, we know these people are never going to give up their V8s. So let's just sell them, a better V8 that maybe is a little more efficient and a little bit better. And then we have the EVs for the people that are ready. And maybe someday we'll get the plug-in hybrids in a few years here, to kind of bridge the gap between the two. But, I think that GM's just doing a very good job with their EVs right now. And again, if they had CarPlay, there would be no holdups for me, really. That's really the only one. They're doing a really good job with everything. And Artillery maybe says, WRX hash coming or not? Your guess is as good as mine. Subaru is another company where they don't follow logic. WRX hash should have come a long time ago, and especially should have come when they started selling it in Mexico. Mexico has a WRX. The Lavorg is, in Mexico. It's right there. I know that, they have more lax crash standards in Mexico, so it's less of a certification burden than it is here in America. But they would sell so many of them. Like, just pay to do the crash testing. It's already going to pass just fine. It's the same basis as the regular WRX. So just suck up the few $1 million, certify them, and I guarantee, it'll revitalize WRX. And probably make it a little more justifiable for people if they're being forced to spend 40 grand on a base WRX now. At least you got some practicality, beyond just a regular sedan, So, logic would say yes, they should do it any day now, but they should have done it 3 years ago too. So, I don't know, what to bet on that, but I'm not optimistic based on their stubbornness at Subaru, it seems, unfortunately. And Gregory says, I'd rather just buy an RDX instead of the TLX. Yeah, I think that's what most people probably said, and that's why TLX just didn't do well. And I see Goth Rocker says TLX is a great car. I test drove it twice. Tested the 4-cylinder turbo and the Type S V6 turbo. Great car, great all-wheel drive. Back seat is tight. My Lincoln Continental seat space spoils me. Yeah, I'm sure that definitely is going to be a lot better. And yeah, that's again biggest problem for TLX. And Gregory says there isn't any car that intentionally lowers the volume every time you push the brake. Yeah, I didn't think there was either, but something maybe Jordan's car is haunted. I don't know. And Goth Rocker says, good luck with the Cadillac. I appreciate that. And he also says, I still want to see a new Mazda 6 with all-wheel drive and the inline-six engine. Me too. I hope that comes at some point here. It seems like Mazda was kind of teasing something unofficially, but just in interviews and stuff, kind of discussing we'd like to do something, but people don't buy enough sedans. But then there's other rumors that they are going to do it. So that's another one where I don't know what to believe, but I sure hope they do someday. And I see Gregory also says, find a spare 150 to 200 grand and buy an Escalade V. Yeah, I wish that would be fun. I know someone else said, oh, the Lyric's nice, but you should have just got an Escalade IQ. And I'm like, one, that thing does not fit in our garage. And two, it's like 130 grand or something. I mean, I guess people just think, I don't know, everyone that's on YouTube's got all the money in the world or something. I don't know, but definitely far beyond my pay grade. And Zachary, thanks so much for stopping by and for being a member for 17 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, congrats on the new car. Our MDX is also a former demo that we leased, and we're saving a fortune. It's a great deal if you can time it right. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that Accurate, I actually didn't know Accurate did that as well. That's great. And glad you got that great setup as well. That's awesome. Yeah, and MDX is still a great car. Hope you're still enjoying it. And great that you're getting a good deal. It's really, it's just so funny how there's such a misconception about leasing. And because even Beth's first Mercedes was a former demo car, and that's how that one was, $500 a month for a C class, and this was back in 2016. And believe it or not, but that was a good deal back then for a, C-class Mercedes, $500 a month, sign and drive. That was really good. And, these days, again, that's you can get a new C-class for probably close to that if you hack the lease well enough. But back then that was a really good price. It's again, all about that demo is really a great kind of workaround to lease basically a used car. It's awesome. And I see Nightbreaker says YouTuber equals rich. I wish it always equated to that. That would make my life so much easier. Because it has not been easy here this year. Let me see here. I see also Colby says, not stop and go for the POV. Yeah, so I would definitely do Yeah, just I guess some lighter traffic. I see what you mean. He says Pittsburgh. I meant Pittsburgh. Apologies. He said I agree. I have the same issue with people exploiting gaps. It's no good. You almost have to pay extra attention. Oh, absolutely. I am militant about making sure that people do not squeeze in. I mean, occasionally, if I can tell that there's someone who's truly confused, like someone who's from out of town, if it's like an out-of-state plate or something, and they're realizing like, oh crap, I'm in the wrong lane, I'll let those people in, no problem. But the people, especially like whenever I used to like work at Harrison Auto Sales, and I would 3 days a week commute through the city in rush hour. Like it even got to the point where I would recognize certain cars and certain drivers who every time would do it, and I would be like inches away from the bumper in front of me to be like, you are not getting in front of me. Like just that drives me crazy. This is not something I tolerate. Harsha says, which state have you driven in has been the best drivers and which ones have the worst? That's a good question. I feel like I had a new winner for worst state not too long ago, but I can't remember what it was. I was somewhere and I was like, holy crap, everyone here cannot drive. I can't remember where it was. I'm trying to think of all the places I've been this year. I don't know. If it comes to me, I'll let you know. As far as best drivers, that one also is kind of hard. Because, I mean, I don't think I'd say the Northern Virginia area, I see the most amount of reckless driving, I'd say. As far as people just really doing some crazy crap. And I'm like, holy man, like these people are just, I don't know, like suicide jockeys. But yeah, no, I don't know. There's no, there's nothing that stands out that I can think of off the top of my head. That's a good question. I swear I had a top state for one of those, but I can't remember what it was. If it comes to me, I'll let you know. And if anyone else has any states they'd like to volunteer, feel free. But let me see. So see the discussion about the Mazda 3 earlier here. And Nightbreaker says, I appreciate the comprehensive answer. Perhaps I should have went with the Elantra N after all. Yeah, if you wanted power, Elantra N would have been definitely the way to go. I mean, there's never too late to, swap into another car. Just comes down to, the finance and all that. But hopefully at some point you can get into something faster. But in the meantime, like I said, the handling mods can be a fun little, compromise, I suppose. And let me see. So I think Confirmation is also recommending the VBWX to Nightbreaker as well. It could be another great choice. And Greg says, what I drive right now is a Crosstrek, and the car needs a WX or XT model with a turbo. And that car needs a WX or XT. Yeah, I agree. I think as much as I think it's, again, insanely easy for Subaru to just put the motor in the Crosstrek, just do a Crosstrek XT, it's so incredibly easy. Like why they haven't done that for the past 10 years, I don't know. But in Subaru's just backwards mindset, I think that their answer to people that want a faster Crosstrek is to get this new Subaru Uncharted thing. If you guys saw that, just came out. It's the new Toyota CHR EV that has Subaru, styling on it. That's 335 horsepower. It's a sub 5 seconds 0 to 60. And I mean, I know turbos are a lot better in the higher elevations, but with EV, you're even better yet, and I think that's going to kind of be the thing that they're going to say, hey, you're in Colorado or you're somewhere like that. You want to have more power than what we offer with the gas stuff, go to the EVs. I think that's going to kind of be Subaru's push for the next few years is, oh, you don't like our powertrains? Go get an EV. And honestly, I mean, yeah, that removes all the problems because then you don't have, the issues that come with the Subaru flat four motors. You don't have their problematic CVTs and the poor tuning of all that stuff. And so you just have flawless powertrain pretty much. And so that Subaru is, again, one of those biggest beneficiaries, like I talked about a couple of weeks ago, with brands that don't do very good powertrains are the best ones to benefit from the EV switchover because all of a sudden all their worries are gone as far as powertrain calibration. I think that applies to Subaru for sure. And confirmation says, I'm from Texas and I saw quite a few Cadillac Escalade EXTs, brand new. Nice, that's cool. Yeah, they were, I think, pretty popular. I mean, maybe not. I don't remember the actual sales numbers, but I don't know. I just feel like something like that would do well these days. Maybe I'm crazy. Gregory says the new Maverick Hybrid is better because you can get it with all-wheel drive, which that's the only thing it lacked because the truck should have had all-wheel drive. Yeah, I agree, and I'm so glad they now have that option. I tried that out in the Maverick here earlier this year, and it's great. Yeah, I'm just so glad that the Maverick exists. I'd love to see them do an SUV version of that as well, because I think that would also do super well. CB Mitchell says GM did not get the Corvair from Europe. If anything, they did use a few Porsche 365s fitted with the flat six as test mules. I've owned Corvairs longer than most here have been alive, 43 years. Nice. Well, thank you for the clarification there. I hadn't heard that about the Europe thing. So that was, a new idea for me. But yeah, happy to hear that it was a GM effort all on their own and trying to maybe reverse engineer a Porsche kind of in a way with the Corvairs. But GM had a lot of great engineering know-how back then. And it's cool they came up with that. It's unfortunate that it was doomed by Ralph Nader. Let me see. Jordan says, does the purple YouTube crown emoji benefit subscribers? Just noticed it after I posted a question. I think the crown thing is just about how much you do super chats or how active you are in the chat, or both, or a combination of other variables. I'm not sure, but I think that's usually how it works out. Because I think like in past ones, like Lanswath, again, doing the membership gifting and stuff often gets him #1 crown here. But I think like he did that earlier on, but then he hasn't commented much after. So maybe that's why it's now he doesn't have the #1 crown. I don't know how it all works, or maybe if the super chats are more, I have no clue. So YouTube is not good at explaining those kinds of things to us, so I have no idea how that all works out, unfortunately. And I see more fact checking there about the Corvair from Gregory as well. Chaz says, I still see Saturns around, which is crazy with Florida sun. I bet, yeah. And because those plastic body panels probably might have had a harder life there in Florida, but that's cool. You see some Saturns. I very rarely see Saturns anymore, but it's always fun to see one. Let me see. NorCal Albert says Mustang GTD finally on the streets. Oh, really? I hadn't heard that they're on the streets now. That's great to hear. And I mean, I'm guessing there won't be very many on the streets, but it'd be cool to see one someday. And Michelle says, you were mentioning lack of colors on Genesis GV60 in the video today. My neighbor, a few houses down, has a GV60 in that copper bronze color. Pretty unique and a big contrast to the black RX they have. Nice. Yeah, I know there was that color. There's the mint color that I thought was really pretty. And there's a couple other colors too they had, but like they all vanished. Like there was also that awful like lime green color, which I don't know if more than 5 people actually purchased that color in America. But it's just that, like, I mean, I looked and I just did not see any GV60s in a single color other than white, silver, or black available, because otherwise that would have been a strong contender, I think, for Beth, because, I think she loved the way Ioniq 5 drove. It's just that she didn't love the styling, and she likes the styling on a GV60. But again, there was no deals. Genesis dealers, maybe it's just around here, maybe I just have the wrong idea, but like it seems like Genesis dealers just do not deal or like do any kind of marketing push whatsoever. It seems like they're just happy to like listen to the elevator music at the Genesis dealer by themselves and like just not push very hard. I don't know. I never see promos. I never see specials from Genesis dealers around here. I never see any kind of incentives that are exciting, even from Genesis corporate. Maybe they don't need it. Maybe they're doing great with sales or they're happy with what they're doing. I don't know. But like, I love Genesis as a brand. And if you're financing or buying, obviously a different ball game. But as far as leasing and for the EVs and stuff, like it just seems like they are not trying for some reason there. I don't know, because they're great products. Maybe they just think that should be good enough for people. But these days you got to have a good price and good incentives, to go along with that. And see, Nightbreaker says, don't finance a car if the APR is in the double digits. You'll be hemorrhaging money on the interest alone. Oh yeah, I mean, I've been telling people this for ever since interest rates shot up a couple of years ago. I'm like, do not buy a car if you don't need to, which is the worst thing a car reviewer or YouTuber should say. But like honestly, it's like I've told people, if you don't need a car, do not buy a car because the interest rates are terrible. And that's another nice thing with the leasing is it's a heavily incentivized rate. I don't remember the exact interest rate on the lease because it's always buried into the money factor in a lease. And again, I just was focused on the payment more so, but I believe they said the interest rate was something around like 3.25% or something like that. So something like that, obviously, much better. But yeah, these past few years, seeing these giant interest rates, it's like just don't buy it. I mean, you're better off buying a $500 car with cash and waiting until interest rates get better if you don't have the money to do something more. I mean, it's just finances. I mean, it's getting better, and some companies are really heavily incentivizing it now. Even Ford's doing like 0% financing for 72 months on certain stuff. So there's certainly some interest rate deals to be had, but yeah, definitely do not go for the high interest stuff. And Joe says, what's one of your favorite on the road chicken nuggets? I really don't go for chicken nuggets on the road personally. I mean, yeah, like that's always Beth's thing. She's always getting the chicken nuggets when we're out on road trips and stuff. Personally, my go-to thing on road trips is actually like I'll just stop at McDonald's and get a McDouble because that's like it I mean, I guess it's probably not the greatest thing to admit, but like that's a really good hamburger to eat while driving because it's very compact. It doesn't, it's not a messy thing. It's very much, it stays in one place. And it's high calories in a quick package. I can eat it really fast and that's very filling. And it's, instead of having to continue to eat for a longer period of time, it's something where I can, just eat it really, really quickly. And even if I'm just sitting in a parking lot, I can down a McDouble in, 2 or 3 minutes and then, be right on the road again versus, sitting there and picking away at other stuff. So as far as nuggets go, I'm not proud of it, but Chick-fil-A's nuggets are usually some of my favorites as far as taste goes. There's also not a lot of other good chicken places around here. I mean, we just got our first Raising Cane's, but it's like 40 minutes away. Popeyes is really few and far between around here. And yeah, there's just not a lot of good nugget places in my opinion. So as far as fast food goes, I like Wendy's nuggets fine. I mean, sometimes they're a little dry, but their spicy nuggets are usually pretty good. So, it's something I'm usually okay with. But yeah, I'm usually just more of a burger guy, even if it's a subpar burger. And thanks for the fun question, Joe. And two says, or was it because he didn't want to give Beth a GR? Well, yeah, I mean, Beth obviously would not have gone for a GR Corolla as a family vehicle. That's another one. Backseat's far too small. And I don't know if she'd want to, have the boy racer image of the GR Corolla as well, or the, just gas engine in general. She just hates transmission lag. She hates waiting for a downshift. And I don't blame her. Again, a lot of people, once they test drive an EV, they're like, holy crap, this is so much better. And they don't want to go back. And that was certainly her experience. She was like, wow, I don't have to be frustrated with my car's throttle response anymore. This is great. And yeah, she like never wants to go back ever again. And Vishal says, my Jetta hit 5,000 miles last week. Still enjoying it. Already coming up on 1 year of owning it as of next month, which is crazy. That's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And it's so great to always hear about people that are really enjoying their car and are happy with the choice they made and are just enjoying it. That's what it's all about, is having that fun mechanical companion to enjoy for all your adventures. And I see too, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, Rip Hogan, who is the Hogan of YouTube automotive? Oh man, that's a good question. Because Hulk Hogan was a character. And also, I don't know, I guess maybe, now with his eulogies being read, it's not something people want to dwell on a whole lot, but there was some not great things that he did. So if we're factoring in the whole picture of Hulk Hogan and not just his on-screen persona, yeah, I don't know, because that's kind of, to me, that would be like dissing a automotive YouTuber. And yeah, there's no one that really kind of think fits that bill, to be honest. Yeah, I can't think of anyone that's kind of like that, or anyone I feel comfortable comparing to Hulk Hogan. Again, because of the negative connotations. So yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't have a good answer, unfortunately. Thank you for the super chat there too. And Jordan says, had Honda CRV and 2025 Maverick both in eco mode when I pressed the brake and the audio sound was lower, I swear. Weird. Yeah, like I said, the only thing I can think of is as speed dropped, the speed adaptive volume control in the stereos dropped the volume. That's the only thing I can think of. I wish I had a better idea. But that's the only guess I've got. And Sue says being Daddy Akio's little boy equals filthy rich. I wish. I mean, trust me, like someone make the connection. I'd be more than happy to be his personal assistant. I'd be happy. I'm open to new job suggestions at this point because, again, YouTube is just getting harder and harder. But no, yeah, I'd love to work more closely with Toyota someday if they ever were up for it. And let me see. Michelle says Dallas, Texas, the drivers there are menaces, and you got to really be alert. Interesting. Yeah, every time I drive through Texas, I don't really have any giant complaints, or at least nothing that stands out in my mind that I remember. Thankfully, I've had good luck. Yeah, I'm trying. I mean, Florida's always crazy with their drivers, but I'm so rarely ever driving in Florida because there's usually not any press drives in Florida. So like the last time I was in Florida was when we went to Disney World last year, and that was again not a ton of driving, but yeah, people were always crazy there. That's why, famous, Florida man kind of thing. And let me see. Two says Jordan's under the Twilight Zone there with his mysterious car stereos. And Lancelot says, I'm on my Apple TV now lurking. Sounds good. No worries, Lancelot. No pressure to participate, but happy you're still hanging out and enjoying with us here. And Vishal says, Genesis dealers around me don't do anything either. Never see promos, deals, or anything from them. Weird. Okay, well, I'm glad it's not just me. So now I'm like curious. I want to get to the bottom of this about like why Genesis doesn't try. Maybe it's just sales are good enough. I don't know. This is interesting. I have to think more about this. These are the kinds of things I think about in the shower. I'm like, I gotta figure it out. Like, why does Genesis not do promos? And let me see here. Michelle says I got 2.9% for 60 months on my Jetta last year. That's awesome. That's a very good rate for last year too. Really fortunate to have gotten that. Volkswagen tends to have pretty good financing offers. Nice. Well, that's great. And yeah, that's an awesome rate, especially for 60 months. Congrats on that. And two says that Carlos, as who he would say is the Hogan of YouTube Automotive. Carlos, I'm not sure which Carlos you're referring to, but because Carlos Lago is the only one I know of, and he does not at all fit Hulk Hogan. Yeah, because I can't think of any other Carlos. But Nightbreaker says, Matt, if you ever come across a Dave's Hot Kitchen, you got to try it. Even better than Raising Cane's. Nice, I'll have to try it. Thanks for the suggestion. I feel like I might have seen those somewhere in my travels here in the past year or two, but I don't recall. I've never had it though. And B Mitchell says, hate to admit it, but I also do the McDog food on the road. 2 cheeseburgers are quick and dirty for driving and munching. Yep. Yeah. Well, I've done it. I'm not the only one. Thanks for for admitting that with me there. And B Mitchell also said, go ahead and say it. Hulk equals Doug. I don't even think that fits as much as I wouldn't mind. Okay. Scotty is Hulk. I'm comfortable saying that. Scotty Kilmer is the Hulk Hogan of the automotive world. That is actually a perfect fit. I should have thought of that first. Yeah, because Doug just, yeah, not the personality or yeah, I think between faking his own death and all the other bizarre stuff that Scotty does, I think Scotty Kilmer probably would be the best fit for Hulk Hogan, in my opinion. CB Mitchell says, "Ding ding ding, we have a winner." That's it. And let me see. Yeah, also saying Rip Scotty. Yeah, every week he's probably faking his death at this point. I don't bother following him because yeah, it's not worth it. But yeah, I know he faked it at least once, and hey, he's laughing all the way to the bank. All the people that still watch his videos and still hang on his every word and put up with the insane clickbait every single time. Which, by the way, fun little thing here right at the end for everyone that's still lingering here. I was so on the fence about the thumbnail for the lyric video there. I sent the thumbnail around because I finished editing that video last night. And last night I sent that thumbnail to probably over a dozen people between Beth and I. Like, do you think we should do the Cybertruck one, or should we do the straightforward like silhouette of the lyric for the thumbnail? And everyone's like, do the Cybertruck, it'll be hilarious, everyone's gonna love it, it's gonna be great. I did lose, like, it looks like about 15 subscribers today, who I assume were people who immediately were like, oh hell no, this guy got a Cybertruck, and immediately unsubbed without even clicking to watch the video. And I don't blame them. If there was someone that I subscribed to and they were just like, I'm going to the dark side, I'd also be like, yeah, I don't need to watch this anymore either. But I was really, really on the fence because I have never done anything quite to that level of clickbait. And I think that, especially those of you who are, hang out in these live streams, I would never in a million years have gone for a Cybertruck, so you immediately got the joke. But, the people who are more casual viewers and stuff probably were scared, confused, worried, but I hope that everyone at least clicked through. That was the goal, obviously, of the clickbait, but hopefully click through. We're like, oh, phew, he hasn't gotten a Cybertruck and lost his mind. That worked out okay. Hopefully, obviously, views are fantastic. I mean, the views are always good for the reveal videos of new cars, but this one seems to be doing especially good. So hopefully the strategy pays off. But by the way, do not think that I'm going to be constantly clickbaiting you guys. That was a one-off thing. I still very much about being straightforward, and just thought it was kind of a fun opportunity to try to kind of just go a little different, just because those silhouettes too, it's so predictable. I know, like with the Fiat, when I did that one, like half the people were like, yeah, I could tell from the thumbnail it was the Fiat, because it's just too round and bubbly to be anything else. But this one, I wanted to give it a little more of an air of mystery and surprise there, and I think that kind of accomplished that. So I see Michelle says he got a kick out of the thumbnail. I'm glad. And I see Austin says some guy recently died because he was trapped in a burning Cybertruck. That's really tragic and sad. I'm not sure. That is something with other EVs where there has been some strange or just design choices where certain cars just don't have manual ways to open the doors. Strangely enough, I mean, we also saw this with the one billionaire lady, I think the sister of Elaine Chao or whatever, who was had her Model X that she accidentally, I think, drove into a lake. She, I don't know if it was the Tesla's fault of, going into reverse instead of drive, or vice versa, and couldn't get out, and it's tragic. But like with EVs, especially, or any car, you always need to make sure you know your way out. And that's one thing, like with the Mach-E, with the front doors, like it's an electronic release. But if you pull beyond the usual indent of the door pull and you pull a little harder, that does actually manually open the door. But for the back seats in like Model 3 and like Mach-E, I believe, I don't think there's a manual override. So in those types of instances, you need to like climb through to the front and then get out, which can take time. And I'm not sure the exact details around that Cybertruck, but I'm not sure if the driver is in the front, why they weren't able to get out. That's something that should be looked into. but there should be a fail safe. All these cars typically have fail safes, and that's one thing I like about the Lyric. Actually, is the Lyric is manual doors. As far as like, there's no electronic release. There's an electronic unlock to it, obviously, but so that part's electronic, because I think every car these days almost basically has, or not every car, but a lot of these newer higher tech cars have electronic locks for all that stuff. But as far as like, you can actually, it's a physical door pull to open the door on all four doors, I believe. And that's, again, just something I think is very important in cars. But yeah, that's a shame about the Cybertruck. I mean, regardless of someone's judgment in cars or taste in cult leaders, I think, no one deserves to die for that, so that really sucks. And yeah, hopefully if there is some flaw with a truck, that's something that gets rectified and class action lawsuited or whatever the case is, to try and make that as right as can be made. And let me see here. So two says Terry was controversial. Hogan helped build pro wrestling. But I thought Hulk also, there was something else. I can't remember. I mean, maybe it's a political kind of stuff too, but I thought there was also something else where he was like, I think Beth said something that was like he was doing racist stuff. But I don't remember, so I'm not going to repeat it until I actually know the facts. But there was some kind of discussion about him being a racist back in the day. But anyway, again, he's in the ground now, and it's not something I guess we need to harp on anymore. But yeah, I mean, obviously the wrestling impact, for those who enjoy that, was definitely very, very profound. Yeah, Austin says, yeah, don't think, okay, so I'm not the only one. Austin says, don't think Doug went on a racist tirade. Yeah, so that is, okay, so I'm not the only one that remembers that about Hulk Hogan. Yeah, yeah. And let me see, Lancelot says, the factory stereo in my 2005 vehicle Sabre had a speed-sensitive volume on it. The volume would go up and down with the speed of the car. Yeah, and that's something that most modern cars that I review, a lot of them have that. So that is absolutely commonplace for sure. I see Austin says Whistling Diesel could be a Hulk Hogan persona. I don't think I've ever actually watched Whistling Diesel. I can't even picture what he looks like to actually say. So yeah, but might be a good fit too. And I see Nightbreaker says Dave's Hot Chicken is more of a West Coast thing. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll have to try it out next time I'm on the West Coast. And let me see. So yeah, I see Nightbreaker says see you tomorrow. Yeah, so I have at 2 hours here actually, so we will sign off here in a minute. I see we kind of had the questions slow down as well, so because everyone else is ready to wind up here soon too. But last few here, Austin says, oh yeah, we covered that. And Vishal, last question here says, my friend had to drop off their Model Y at Tesla to fix a bumper issue. Tesla Plaid is a loaner. Wow, that's cool. Pretty awesome. They limit them to 85 miles per hour, but was still cool. Never felt such strong G-forces in a car. Yeah, and I don't know, that might beat my record for the fastest thing I've ever accelerated. I'm trying to think, because like I did the Rivian, that was, I think, under 3 seconds. There's a couple others that are like dipped into the twos, I think, that I've done, but I can't remember why I can't remember what the fastest thing. I mean, we did a P100D Tesla Model S, back in 2019 before they were controversial, and that was very fast and impressive already on its own. So Plaid's got to be even crazier, I'm sure. So I see Nightbreaker says, correction, Dave's Hot Chicken actually has locations all over the U.S. now. Okay, awesome. I'll have to check it out sometime. But all right, well, yeah, I think we've kind of reached the end here. So thank you all so much for hanging out here on a Saturday Live, and glad it worked for many of you here. And yeah, so I will be able to go back to doing a Wednesday Live here this coming Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. And stay tuned for, again, more POV videos, more review videos. And yeah, I'm also, again, for those of you who keep asking about the 500E, I'm going to try and work in a POV video on that here this coming week. And the POV videos, by the way, will also have improved audio. The A3 video, the audio was not great with the wind noise being really bad. I have a couple different wind noise solutions that I'm trying. It's going to depend on the car as far as which mic I can mount and how I can do everything. But all of the videos going forward will have good sound quality. So if you were turned off by the poor sound quality in the first couple, hopefully that will be improved. Give them another shot if you are someone who was turned off by that. But hoping those POV videos continue to do well here going forward, because they're a cool extra thing, and I'm glad I've been able to add those. But anyway, so stay tuned for all that here in the coming week. Have a great rest of your weekend as well. Have a great Sunday, a great week as well going forward here. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much again for hanging out. Take care.